You know, when there's a new baby in the family, and perhaps you're the grandmother, this is not my situation, but it was brought to my attention by somebody that I know. And we talked through what was going on there. And the first thing I want to say is when we have a new mom, we need to support and surround her because new moms tend to think that they know, and this is a part of my work is the knowing piece. And they're insecure because they don't know because it's all new, but they do want to know and they want to protect that ability to know the best about their child. They're quite protective. And there might be some feedback and things that people want to say in the comments because that idea alone can go in many different directions depending on the person, how they were raised, what type of environment they were in their own home. I know in the home I grew up in, babies and young children were looked at as a burden. So when I had children, I felt like I didn't want people to hold my child because I didn't want to give them this burden. That's what I had been taught, that I was a burden and that a child is a burden. That was my experience. So it made sense that I was like, oh, no, no, it's okay. It wasn't that I was protective. It was that I felt like, why would I do that to you if that was my experience? Strange, right? It's not right necessarily. Maybe it's not wrong, it's just not how I would have dealt with it if I had now been doing it now. But when we're young, we don't know. And yet, as a new parent, we can be in this struggle about who gets to hold the baby and what the rules and regulations are for the baby. Some new moms are freewheeling and they're like, hey, no problem. But here's why I'm making this video is a mother came to me and said, I'm having this situation. And interestingly, the energy is right there for this situation to come up, as well as I have another person in my life that had something come up with their mother and same kind of construct. And I had something come up in my life with this same kind of construct, right? So whatever's going on energetically is bringing this to the forefront, this energy of I'm going to be very protective of something because I'm afraid. And then we are the recipients and we have to figure out what is the boundary or the natural consequence or the positioning to make it right, to let it right itself and become harmonized. And when we're dealing with a grandbaby or we're dealing with a close friend, we want that to come around in a healthy way or let it flesh out. There's something unhealthy there and address it or let it go. In the case of a friend, we might let that go or them go. But with a baby, it's different. So let's talk about it and get into it. Really, what was going on there is the grandmother was frustrated. And the grandmother is the son or the dad's father, rather, of the child, of the grandbaby. And often the mother of the baby will give her own mother and her own family preference because she knows what to expect with them. And it's her way of doing it. Her traditions are there. That's natural. But the piece that we want is this person that I know with the son was getting really angry behind the scenes. And they're not somebody who gets angry at things like this. They are one of the best parents I know. And it surprised me. I thought something bigger is going on here. And we don't have to look at that like, well, they're triggered by this. No, what is really the elephant in the room with a new parent is they want to prove that they are good at this, that they understand the child. And we need to separate a bit to give them the space to do that and feel like they have control over it. But the other piece of it is this person, the grandma, made a very good comment. Well, what if I don't get to be with the baby and hold it and the baby doesn't know me? And then at a certain age, say 1.5, 2, where the baby's having separation anxiety, the baby won't come to me and I can't really watch it. It would be very challenging, right? It wouldn't go easily. And I said, then that's the consequence, that we can communicate with the new mom and our son, who is the new father, and say to them, hey, I am interested in cultivating a relationship that you feel secure with me holding the baby. And I recognize you don't want me to pass the baby to somebody else without asking you. I see that. And yet, if I'm not able to cultivate that relationship, that concerns me for the future, and leave it at that. Or don't even say it concerns me for the future, or about cultivating the relationship with the baby. What has to happen is you're still the parent, even though you're a grandparent to the baby. And when they say, no, 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 it's okay, we'll take care of it. No, 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 you don't need to hold the baby. No, 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 you don't need to come and help or bring meals or do anything. When they're pushing back, when it comes time to babysit, we need to say, that won't work for me. If the child we know is 1.5 and will have separation anxiety, right? So we're going to have a consequence back to them to show them that's not going to work for me. And this might sound harsh or like, well, don't you just want to be with the baby? But what we're doing is we're parenting them through this other side. So this same person, the grandmother, had another situation come up where there's tension a little bit for a wedding that's going on. And we want to give the bride and that in this case is the coming in-law the ability to understand, and with the new mother, the ability to understand that you are loved by me as the mother-in-law, and I want for us to work this out. So when it comes time to talk about it with the new mom, when you're ready, it's my desire to talk about this. And I want a close relationship with you. I want us to understand how to communicate like this. That's what I want for both of us. Right? So that we're not saying things like, I can't think of what this mama said, but some things that might be more like, that's my son, a little bit. And we want to be careful of that. We want to really be this free, hey, let me know when you're ready. That's a great statement in almost any circumstance for an adult with a child to let the child have a separation so they can come back to what they really feel inside, but it's in truth what they know. So I have the example, I think I've had this in a video before, but I'll give it here, is I had a 2-year-old over to visit with the mom and the dad and the older sibling. And they had told me how old the younger one is, and I couldn't remember. And I said, how old are you? And the child got shy. And the mom said, you can tell, you know. And don't do that. The mom could have put the hand on the child and said, she'll tell you when she's ready. But instead, I said to the child, you tell me when you're ready. And about 5 minutes later, that 2-year-old said, I'm 2, and blah, 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 blah. And the mom looked at me like, how did you get that child to be so responsive? But what's happening there is we teach our children to be responsible, and you need to respond at this time, and it's performative behavior. I was teaching the child to be responsive to a complete stranger, and she was responsive. She was able, she felt safe, and she knew I don't have any expectation of her because I'm saying when you're ready. And if you're never ready, that's assumed. Or not assumed, it's implied. I'm okay if I never know, but we don't say any of that. She senses that. And she, children come around fast. She felt ready right away or pretty quickly and said it, and her mom couldn't believe. I mean, I've had parents say to me, your children talk to you more than they talk to me. And it's because I let them have that space. We're eating at the table alone, the child and I, and the parent is across the room and another, with the other adults. One time that was the case. We were having a party and I thought I'll sit with the kid because he was the only kid there. And then I said, I was asking a question about books because the child likes to read. And I said, don't worry about it. Tell me when you're ready. And then the child waited because they're a processor, right? And a visual probably processor. And then they came right through about 10 minutes later and told me everything that they know about the books that they read and what they like. And I said, we have some of these books downstairs that fit what you're saying. Let's go downstairs and look at them. Do you see there's safety and then connection? And then I have this, bevy of books, and I let the child choose, like, hey, bring some upstairs. You can read them and hang out. You can hang out on the couch or in this other room, the office, and wherever you want. Because that kid needs maybe a quieter environment. Not that they're sensitive in a way, but they're just built that way, right? So the point that I'm making here is we want to not think too much, but really when we're dealing with a new mom, the elephant in the room is she's scared. And she can't admit that because it's not safe. And what adults say to her that have had children is, oh, you're being too sensitive, or oh, children are resilient, or don't worry about it. And that mom can't help but worry about it. We are denying a new parent that place that is so hard. And it was very hard for me because it looked like I had support and I didn't. So I know that space super well, where I felt like I have to be the one that knows for the child because they can't speak or tell me. And these people are, touching her eyes and her face. And I'm like, get your hands off my kid. because and then she got an eye infection. It's like this stress, right? And spiritual people say, well, you caused that eye infection because you were so, but you know what? It's not working for me. You are stressing me more, and a new mom may be very stressed. So, as a grandparent, or as an auntie, or as a friend, we want to lay off and say, quietly after a pause, learning that place between having a baby and moving into the fullness of it, it's an interesting journey. And then being quiet. And they might say, yeah, they might even shed a tear because it's a change in your life that is so significant and you can't anticipate it. You think everything will be perfect and it's not, right? The child's up and crying and you don't know why. And then you find out that their diaper was rubbing them fun. It's all these things, right? And you want to be perfect. So with new parents or a bride and a groom, let them off the hook. Take a step back. As a grandparent, deal with yourself behind the scenes. Wrestle through, why am I so agitated and not being able to hold the baby at free will or when I want to? Why am I feeling shut out? I'm feeling like my son is having to call me instead of the mother directly communicating with me, but that information is coming from the mother. That's clear. We want to open that dialogue when there's an appropriate time to say, hey, new mama, let's have a conversation about this at some point when you're ready. But for me, the sooner it would help me, but let me know. And then have the conversation about, I want us to be closer. You're my daughter-in-law. I'm going to know you the rest of my life. And I want us to be able to communicate. I want you to be able to say, be angry and realize that's not appropriate, but also you're letting out what you need to convey. And then you can come back and say, I'm sorry that I was angry. I'm new at this. And you're let off the hook for being new at it. You're let off the hook for being scared. You're let off the hook for not knowing and wanting so badly to know because you are an invested parent that you are in your own kind of way. That's not fair, but trying to control something that you have to let go of a little more to allow it to figure itself out. Sorry if you hear a dog barking. There's a dog outside that just is barking a little bit. So here we are in this environment. We want to use communication and make sure that we're letting the mom have that pause to be able to come back and work it out later with you. But also setting a little bit of an expectation on the tension of let's do it soon because the value to us as a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law is incredible. And this person I'm talking about is an incredible parent. What I said to them is go back to parenting. You're still parenting your son and a bit with your daughter-in-law. Go back to those core skills. It's important. And we want to convey this freedom. We don't want to stay with especially with a daughter-in-law to a mother-in-law, in this, I don't know what she's thinking, because the mother-in-law can quickly feel like they're overstepping, even though it's my son. And that's how my person felt is this is my son and couldn't get through the like, this is so simple. Just let me hold the baby. I'll wash my hands. I'll do the things. But there's this concern about why can't I? I feel controlled. And I said, part of that is tradition. What a family does for their traditions is the only thing that separates your family from a different family. That's it. We're otherwise relatively similar, right? The tradition of how we eat food, the tradition of how we celebrate a holiday, that makes us unique. And, having this new mother come in, there are different traditions held, even though this person I'm talking about is not only a safe person, they have a lot of great advice. But we have to be careful because that new mom needs to sort out a lot of actually natural consequence about how the baby behaves, what she needs. And it's a steep climb. So go away from saying, oh, you know what? You're with your second child, you'll go easier. Stop it. That is not helpful, particularly to somebody who's in a sensitive state, like a new mom, or saying, well, she's probably got postpartum depression. Don't do that. Don't. The other thing that you can do if you're in a situation with somebody you have a long-term relationship with is you can do this thing that I call, it's such a silly name, but holding a pure stream of love for them. I know it's dumb, but I figured it out with somebody in my life years ago where at an event that we would go to, they would mess with each person saying something mean about them. And it was their own insecurity, but I couldn't figure out why they do it. And after that event, I started thinking about how is it, like, what is it that's going on there? And I thought, well, their insecurity stems from they don't feel loved because these people that are in that at that event are we're in close proximity in our life. And so I decided it's about love and who can I and who can I not be for that person. It took me 2 months. What the hell? But then I kept asking, okay, I could go and replumb their house, which I had done some of that work. I could probably help them re-roof their house or with this or that. Physical things on their home. I was not capable of going and watching their children or being involved with them emotionally or mentally. That wasn't going to work for me. That was my boundary with them. And once I decided this, and how I decided it is from here to here, where I was super like, what is the matter going on? Or what's the problem going on here? To this point of, I know that I fully love them without any resistance, was because I shored up what the boundaries are in the way of this is who I can and who I cannot be for them. There are a lot of women in my generation who are not excited to be grandparents. That's interesting, or grandmothers. They're more like, it's fine, but I'm not going to be all invested in it. It doesn't feel right to me. Very different approach. So we need to use this idea of who can I and can't I be for them? Like I know for my kids, and if my kids watch this, here you go. If my kids should have kids, I'm the grandmother that if they're going to go on a 2-week vacation, I'm all in. I'll be there. I'll do all the things, but you better come home in 2 weeks because if my mind is set on the 2-week marker, I can do it till then and then I'm probably done. I'm not the grandmother who could watch the child because you're sick and you can't, or they're sick and they can't, parent would have to stay home from work. That's not me. I'm not the pinch hitter. I'm not the, oh my gosh, I haven't, to do this. I'm not. And interestingly, I live outside of the country, so that's not even possible. But I am the grandmother who would fly a long distance to come and take care of the kids for 2 weeks. I know that. And it preemptively allows me to usher in love with my kid and their partner to say, hey, this is who I can be, right? And I can send gifts or I can, whatever it is. These are the things we want to know so that we understand ourselves and our relationship with what we need and want with our own children and with their spouses. And we don't want to get into the, well, I don't know, and what's going on. And we want to recognize when we're talking about them behind their back with our friends or trying to sort it out. That is the signal that we need to come and do the work by ourselves behind the scenes. Why am I wrestling with this so much? Feel the feelings that are somatic in the body. You might have your elbow fire and be, talk to it. Talk to your elbow. What is going on there? And then let it pause. You let me know when you're ready. Tell your elbow. That sounds crazy, but somatically, we're releasing those ways that we might arc into something that was, like people call it a trigger or a trauma, that was something that I'm going to say gets us stuck up from really expressing who we are in a loving way. It's not our fault, but it is by design in our world. This is how we all have been programmed and conditioned, or I don't like those words either. This is what we've been taught. That's essentially it. At a young age, this is how things work. If somebody's mean to you, well, that's just how he is. If it's an adult and you're a child. That's not true. That's perpetuating and giving permission for the status quo to perpetuate. So, just to recap, we want to deal with ourselves behind the scenes and wrestle out the emotions. Why am I so resistant with this? And it might take you a day, a week, 2 months, it might take you a year and a half. That's okay because it's worth that movement forward to have no resistance with the people that are close to you and that you love. It's important. And we're not used to this work either, right? So what we're looking at through doing the work behind the scenes, looking at ourselves, not going to a friend, but wrestling it out with ourselves, is to release ourselves from controlling the situation. Well, you're just not very generous with that child. This is what people say. I hear it all the time from women my age who have grandchildren. They're frustrated, but they just are kind of mean. And sometimes they say things to them, Mama, that's not fair to a new mom. She's scared. And we think that she's self-righteous. She's scared. but we can't say you're just scared. That's also not fair. We have to give her that time and space to fill in the gaps and let her know, what do you need? When you know, let me know. I would like to help. And I would love to hold the baby as often as I can. I love that child. They're magic. And then let it go. When you're ready, you let me know how that looks for you, right? So that there's that ability that they can kind of seat into their knowing. And we're not sharp at this because we've been told, do it my way. That's not the way to raise a baby or how to do it. Well, who knows how to do it? It took me a solid 8 years. And it was when my first was 4 years old that I started really learning parenting techniques that kept, I say it this way, and I'm not a religious person, but it kept them with their God. It kept them connected to that source. That was powerful. But us being the authority and knowing is not powerful. The child knows best for themselves. The new mom knows best for herself, but she has a lot to figure out. Her body's out of whack. If you talk to me about my first birth, oh my God, there was so much. My body in some certain area needed a lot of healing, and it took a long time, longer than I think they think. I called the doctor 2 weeks and I was like, is this still the case? And they said something horrible that I will not repeat because if you're a new mom, disgusting. But I took my body a little longer to heal. I didn't have the support. There was some melancholy about the lack of support when I had been chided to have a baby by others. I did have a baby because I wanted to have that experience in my life with my partner. But there is, after all that pressure and, and overt information from people about have a baby, and then they don't come and support you in a way that you can understand, and they're critical of you, it's annihilating. It was annihilating for me. I couldn't deal with it very well. It made me feel like I was all alone in it. And that's what I'm asking you to do, is help a new mom not feel all alone in it. And, not, can I bring 4 meals? Don't be intense. Be gentle. Recognize the elephant in the room, but don't state it. She's scared. She doesn't know what she's doing, and she's trying very hard to fill in the understanding of how it works for herself, for her baby and her new partner. And she could be controlling and protective as a result because it's her baby and she'll find her way through. But we have to help by being gentle, right? And saying, what can I do to help? And like I said earlier, I love that baby. I want to hold it as much as I can, but you let me know how that looks for you, right? Okay, I'll sum it up there. I'm sure I missed some things. Maybe I'll do another video another time to give more information on this, but let's go easy on the women who are having babies and recognize they're in a different situation than their partner because the one that's birthing the baby is going through a lot hormonally, of course, but they're also going through a lot emotionally. And our society, if anything, has become a narcissistic social disordering society because we are completely unwilling to recognize emotions. Like, I know when my father died, my partner gave me one hug, and that was it. I was supposed to be done grieving. And now I was supposed to be everything I was before. And while I was capable of mostly that, I got I got burned. And it's hard because death is a wild card. I needed more support and I asked for it. I asked for my needs and I was shot down in a time when I was grieving something big, right? I think when you have a parent die, for most of us, we are not only grieving the death of that parent, we also are reconciling a bit our own passing because it's right there, right in front of us. And we kind of can say, like, wow, I will pass away one day too, right? And for some people, that can be a little bit like the rug pulled out from underneath them. For others, I'm sure it's not a big deal, but that was my experience with my father passing. And I had a sister that passed 2 years prior to that, which was even more processing my own mortality, which I'm comfortable, dying, but there's something about it that had to be processed at a deeper level. So that's just an example. I hope that this video has supported you in understanding perhaps how to translate that into different relationships in your life too, to create those primary relationships have the largest level or biggest level of narcissistic social disordering. They are our hardest relationships to navigate because they're so close to us and we don't want to misstep and we get angry, we get these things and because emotionally we've been told no way, pave that over, don't assert that. we've become convoluted in our communication skills on how to communicate in a way that works for everybody. I do have something, I'm just thinking of this now, called the conversation compass. And if you put a message down below in the comments to send you the compass or conversation compass, I'd be happy to send that to you. I I don't know on YouTube. I'm such a renegade, right? I don't know if we can message each other. So you can find me also on Facebook or other places, and I will look um, there, and I can DM you the link to the conversation compass. Simple statements that are easy to remember so that you have something to say to, and here's the trick, being the best parents. There's one simple trick to be a really good parent. You buy yourself effing time. Let me get back to you on that. But in some circumstances, I have these phrases. They're super easy and they're so easy. They're almost like hard to use at first because you're going to forget. But I'm not going to continue this video. Let's move on. But if you're interested in that, please reach out and I will find a way to connect you and get you that information to support communicating clearly. And hey, let's clean this up. My work is about collapsing narcissism. I'm the home of collapsing narcissism. And we're going to do it by really having needs met. And we do that through communication and people being able to hear us and like tripping up the energy that's been before so that we can move forward and people will respond to us very differently. There are some other parts to this too, but let's talk about that in another video. Okay, thanks and be in touch if you'd like that compass.